Well, you finished your script, the first draft, and that's an incredible accomplishment. And as I say in my book, and it's a very sincere feeling from me, celebrate. We frequently forget to acknowledge our achievements, and we constantly look at the things we haven't done, and that tends to overwhelm us a little bit. But the idea of finishing a script and appreciating what your accomplishment gives you strength. It gives you a sense of the thing you have achieved is meaningful. And I say if you're going to sacrifice a tree or two to print your script, then you should get it out, riffle through the pages, sniff the ink on the pages, and just enjoy that sense that you actually have wrought this thing out of your imagination. And I love what happens after I've got from the East Coast to the West, as I described, getting the first draft out. You're Lewis and Clark, and that is the next thing you're dealing with is editing your material and finding what is and distilling down in there the story and the characters and the shape of the piece. And the way I do that is I am very careful. I read through my own work before I share it. I try and make sure I catch as many errors and problems as I can. And then I only share the script with people I trust early on in the game. I don't want to get depressed by somebody who's arrogant or who doesn't really understand what I'm trying to achieve, giving me opinions. What I'm looking for is what I call the story midwives, the people that are trying to help me give birth, understand what the pain of writing is, and understand how to be encouraging and to give me ideas that will help me get to my goal and not criticize things because they have their own perspective of what they would have rather achieved. Those people you're going to meet later on, and you don't need to meet them yet. One of the great joys, as I said, about working on a script that's already accomplished is you now have actually got to the coast. You have your whole piece. You can look at it and see what it was you were trying to write. Previously, we were working on the idea of just getting something out of you. And now you've actually got it out of you. It's sitting there on a page, and you can see what your mind was creating, which is frequently not consciously available until you've done this. You can see what the story's about. You can see what the goals of the characters are. And now you can go through and fine-tune each of those. One of the ways I find also is that when you're working on a script, you tend to look at it so many times it becomes a memory repeat, that you're just looking at the memory of the words instead of actually seeing the thing freshly through your own eyes. So if you take the chance to read, take the opportunity to share the script with people, listen to their input, then what I suggest is trying to find a way of looking at your script through fresh eyes for yourself. And one of the techniques I've done is to actually change the font or change the size of the type. You can always go back and put it back at 12 if you switched it to 14, but by doing that you've moved all the words around on the page, you've moved the shapes of the words on the page, and you've jogged your eye to see it freshly, which gives you the privilege of seeing your own material the way the other people might be seeing it. When you do get notes from somebody who is helping you, one of the key things in any story is make sure it makes sense. Now, when you have one or two people read a script and they have different opinions of what might be worked on, I call those opinions. But when those two people both agree on the same point, that may well be a fact, and you have to deal with it. And again, it's not a criticism of what you've accomplished. It's just sometimes we can be so close to our material that we don't necessarily need as much reinforcement to understand it as the people who are reading it. So one of the most simple things you've got to do is make sure that the script makes sense to the others that read it so that you can get what your points were across clearly. Another point that I find very helpful is that once you've actually got your script through, the most important thing then is to digest it down to as few words as possible. So you don't want a script that's 140 pages going out to people. They don't like that when they go home on a weekend to read that much. Can you get words off the page? And every word that you get off that page makes your script tighter and read better. And there's a really simple technique I found, and that is not to rewrite your script, but to actually go look just at the dialogues. And just to see if you can juggle the dialogues down so that they distill better. And I talk more about this in my book, and also the same thing applies to the descriptions. But do them as separate items. Just go and look at each dialogue patch, and you'll start to see that you've got habits or that you don't have quite the brevity of language that you could do. And the goal now is just to deal with that one issue. Get the dialogue to be rich in character, the things that you want your character to evoke or characters to evoke, and also distill it down so that you're only dealing with the most interesting parts of their language, and try and make the choices of what the dialogue is speaking to escalate in interest. You might have put the most interesting part of a character's dialogue at the beginning and then put two supportive thoughts after it. See if you can actually switch those, or see if you can actually take out the interesting part and see if the dialogues that are supporting it hint at the intent of the piece of dialogue and make it less literal and less kind of obvious. And you can do the same thing with distilling your descriptions. The less words on the page, and I always find that the more poetic the words, the more impassioned the words, and sometimes the more characterful the words in the descriptions, the more powerful are my scripts. So when you get through that, you probably could drop off several pages. You can tighten your script. You've made sure that other people understand it. That's the time to test it again, and maybe on some people that aren't story midwives, and get another level of perspective on what you've accomplished.